Hi everyone, today we are going to go over 1.3, which is use midpoint and distance formula. We're actually going to split this section up into 2 days, so day 1 is all about midpoint. Midpoint. The point that divides a segment into 2 congruent segments. Just remember, midpoint is the point in the middle. Segment bisector. Anytime you see the word bisector, automatically we know it means cut in half. So a segment bisector is a point, ray, line segment, or plane that intersects the segment at its midpoint, cuts it in half. In the skateboard design, VW bisects XY at point T, and XT is equal to 39.9 centimeters. Find XY. If you look at my diagram, I already started writing in some information that we know. It told us that XT is 39.9, so I labeled that here, 39.9. If you look at this skateboard, we see these tick marks. Anytime you see tick marks like that, it's telling you that those segments are congruent. So if XT is equal to 39.9, that means that TY is also equal to 39.9. That's also the definition of bisect. Bisect means cut in half. So T is the midpoint, it's in the middle. So if I want to figure out what this entire segment is, XY, I just need to add up the 2 parts. So XY is going to equal XT plus TY. Well, XT is 39.9. TY is 39.9. Add those up. 79.8 centimeters. Example 2. Use algebra with segment lengths. Point M is in the midpoint. Point M is the midpoint, so it's the point in the middle of VW. Find the length of VM. So I'm going to highlight this because this is what I'm going to be searching for at the very end. All right, midpoint, point in the middle. I'm going to draw an arrow here. So if this point's in the middle, that means that segment VM has to be the same length as segment MW. We also see that because of these tick marks. So I need to solve for x. How do I do that? I'm going to set my 2 equations equal to each other. So 4x minus 1 is equal to 3x plus 3. Let's subtract 3x from each side. I end up getting x minus 1 is equal to 3. Add 1 to each side. Those cancel. X is equal to 4. All right, well, I'm not done. I only solved for x. It asked me what is the length of VM. So I need to plug this back into my equation for VM. So 4 times 4 minus 1. Plug that in your calculator. You end up getting 15. Now let's double check that this equation here, the 3x plus 3, is also equal to 15. It has to be, since that M is the midpoint, and so we can double check that everything is correct. So if I plug in 3 times 4 plus 3, I end up getting 15. Those match, and we're done. Midpoint formula. If you have 2 coordinates and you're trying to find the point in the middle, we're going to use the midpoint formula, which is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. That's how you find the x coordinate. And y1 plus y2 divided by 2. That's how you find the y coordinate. Now these are just the averages. So you're just adding up the x's, divide by 2. Adding up the y's, divide by 2. So let's try an example together. Find the midpoint between these 2 coordinates, -4, 5 and 4, 7. I'm going to call -4, 5, since that's my first coordinate, I'm going to call that x 1, y1. 4, 7 is my second coordinate, so I'm going to call that x2, y2. So now I'm just going to plug in those coordinates into my equation. So here we go. x1 is -4 plus x2, which is 4. Divide that by 2. I'm going to do the same thing with my y's. y1 is 5 plus y2, which is 7. Divide that by 2. Let's simplify this. -4 plus 4 is 0. 0 divided by 2 is just 0. Let's simplify my y coordinate. 5 plus 7 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So 0, 6 is the midpoint of those two coordinates. Here's a similar problem. Find the midpoint. The endpoints of RS are R1, -3, and S is 4, 2. Find the coordinates of the midpoint. So since R is my first coordinate I see, I'm going to call that one x1, y1. Since S is my second coordinate, I'm going to call that x2, y2. So once again, my midpoint formula is adding up my x's, divide that by 2, adding up my y's, divide that by 2. All right, let's plug in what we know. x1 is 1, x2 is 4, divide that by 2. And my y's, -3 plus y2, which is 2. Divide that by 2. Now I need to simplify this, and I end up getting 5/2 and -1/2. If you keep those as decimals, that's okay as well. So either decimal or fraction will also work here. Here's the last problem of this section, and this is going to be our challenge problem. In this problem, we need to find one of the endpoints. So we know the midpoint of JK is M, which is 2, 1, and the endpoint of, and one of the endpoints is J, 1, 4. We need to find the endpoint K. All right, so I'm going to write the midpoint formula up here. So we know x1 plus x2 divided by 2 is y1 plus y2 divided by 2. That's going to equal our midpoint, which I'm just going to call that xm, and ym. So the midpoint of, or the x coordinate of the midpoint, the y coordinate of the midpoint. Let's find the x coordinate of our midpoint. So I know that this equation here has to equal the x coordinate of our midpoint. So that means that x1 plus x2 divided by 2 has to equal the x coordinate of the midpoint. Well, let's plug in what we know. I'm going to scroll down a little. So I know that one of my coordinates, endpoints, is J. The x coordinate of J is 1. Plus, I don't know what the endpoint is for K, so I don't know what the x value is. So I'm going to keep that as x divided by 2 has to equal the midpoint, the x coordinate of the midpoint, which I know by looking at my midpoint coordinate is 2. Now I have an easy problem. I can solve for x, or the endpoint for K, by using this equation. All right, so first thing I need to do, multiply each side by 2. So these cancel, and I have 1 plus x is equal to 4, which means x is equal to 3. All right, I'm going to do the same thing now to find my y coordinate. So I have my midpoint formula. Why is it not writing? So I know that y1 plus y2 divided by 2 has to equal the y-coordinate of my midpoint. I'm going to call that ym. Let's plug in what we know. So scrolling back up, y1 is going to be my j-coordinate, and I see that the j-coordinate is 4 for y, plus y2, I don't know what that is, so I'm just going to keep that as a y, divided by 2 is equal to my y-coordinate of my midpoint, which is 1. So scrolling down, I'm going to solve for y. So the first thing I need to do is multiply by 2 on each side so that these cancel. So 4 plus y is equal to 2. Subtract 4 from each side, y is equal to -2. And here I'm done because now I have my k coordinate, which is 3, -2. I'm going to do 2 boxes there. That's my answer, and that's it.